Let's look at solving systems of equations using elimination. Now, when we're using elimination in this video, we're going to use it by adding or subtracting the system. Alright, so first let's look over some terms. Now remember, a coefficient is the numerical factor when a term has a variable. So it's the number in front of the variable. Now, additive inverse, if you would remember from previously, it means the opposite. And elimination is the act of removing or getting rid of something. So basically, when the coefficient of x or y terms are additive inverses, meaning like -5 and 5, you add them together and it gives you 0, you're going to solve by adding the equations, okay? Now, when one of the variables has the same coefficient in both equations, like 5x and 5x, we're going to solve the system by subtracting the equations. So let's look at some examples with this. Alright, this first one, we have 5x minus 6y equals -32. And 3x plus 6y equals 48. If you notice, we have a -6y and a positive 6y. Those are additive inverses. If you add them together, you're going to get 0. So, since the y terms are additive inverses, we're going to add the equations. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put them one on top of the other. Just like when you started learning addition, you put one number and then the other one right below it. We're doing the same thing. Kind of line them up. Alright, so if I do 5x plus 3x, that's give me 8x. -6y plus a positive 6y gives me 0y. And you don't have to write 0y if you don't want to. -32 plus 48 gives me 16. So basically I'm left with 8x equals 16. Divide each side by 8 and I'm left with x equal 2. Since we know what x is, we're going to take one of the equations. It doesn't matter which one. I typically do the first one. We're going to plug in 2 for x and solve for y. So I've got the 5x minus 6y equals -32. I'm going to plug in x. We found out was 2, so I plugged that in. So I've got 5 times 2 minus 6y equals -32. 5 times 2 is 10. Minus 6y equals -32. Subtract 10 from both sides. I'm left with -6y equals -42. And then I divide each side by a -6, and -42 divided by -6 is 7. So my solution to this system is 7. Notice I wrote it as a coordinate pair, so you need to make sure you remember that. Alright, let's look at another one where we might need to subtract. So we've got the system x plus y equals 18 and x plus 2y equals 25. If you notice, both x's have a coefficient of 1. They're the same. Since they're the same, we're going to subtract them. Now, it doesn't matter which one's on top, okay? So I just wrote the first one on top, the second one on bottom. Notice, though, when I wrote the second one, I put parentheses around it because I need to remember that I'm subtracting this whole thing. So I'm going to distribute this negative. So if that x would become a -x, the 2y becomes a -2y, the 25 becomes a -25. And basically now I'm going to add them. So x plus -x is 0x. Y plus -2y is a -1y. 18 plus a -25 is a -7. Okay, so now I'm left with -1y equals -7. Divide each side by -1 and y equals 7. Now that I know what y is, I'm going to come over here. I plug in 7 for y and solve for x. So I'm going to use the easy one. X plus y equals 18. So if y is 7, I subtract it from both sides. 18 minus 7 is 11. So your x value is 11. So basically your solution is 11, 7. Remember, we write our x value first, then our y. Let's look at another example. So this one I have 2x plus 5y equals 17 and 6x minus 5y equals -9. Look here, we have a positive 5y and a negative 5y. If we add those two together, it's the additive inverses and it gives me 0. So I'm going to add my two equations. So 2x plus 6x is 8x. 5y plus negative 5y is 0. 17 plus negative 9 gives me 8. So I'm really left with 8x equals 8. Divide each side by 8. We know x is equal to 1. So what I'm going to do is take this 1, put it in for x, and I just picked the first equation because, like I said, I don't know why, that's what I normally do. You can use either one. Okay, so 2x plus 5y equals 17. I plug in 1 for x, so 2 times 1 plus 5y equals 17. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 5y equals 17. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. So I'm left with 5y equals 17 minus 2, which is 15. Divide each side by 5, and I get my y equal to 3. So my point, my solution is 1, 3. Now let's look at one last example. 7x plus 2y equals negative 10, and 7x minus y equals 16. Notice, so we've got 7x and we've got 7x. They have the same coefficient. So what I'm going to do is subtract these two equations. So 7x plus 2y equals 10, and then subtract this whole thing of 7x minus y equals 16. So remember, I distribute my minus to each one of these in here to get negative 7x plus y equals negative 16. Okay, so 7x plus negative 7x, that goes away. 2y plus y gives me 3y. And 10 plus negative 16 gives me negative 6. I'm going to divide each side by 3 to get y equal negative 2. Now I need to find x. Again, I take the first equation. You can use the second one if you'd like. 7x plus 2y equals 10. Plug in negative 2 for x. So I'm going to do 7x plus 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Add 4 to both sides. And 10 plus 4 is 14. That goes to 0. So 7x equals 14. Divide each side by 7. And then I'm left with x equals 7. So my solution is going to be 7, negative 2. Now there are a few cases that you kind of need to watch out for. There are 3 types of solutions you can have. Okay, the first one is intersecting lines. Just like what we looked at, where you've got an x value and you've got a y value. So what you'll get is x equals a number or y equals a number. You'll know that it's one solution, okay, and exactly one. Now, if it's the same line and you are subtracting both equations, and once you get all the way down to the bottom, you notice 5 equals 5 or 2 equals 2, the same number equals each other, then you'll know that it's the same line and your solution is infinitely many. Let's say you subtracted them or added them, you get all the way down to the bottom and you end up with 2 different numbers, like 3 equals 7 or 4 equals 1, something like that. Then you know that these lines are parallel and that there is no solution. So you'll put none or just no solution.